Hello everybody, this is Bird Brain. We're here, we are nerdy for the birdies. The Philadelphia Eagles are preparing for a big divisional round game against the LA Rams, and I'm here to give you guys a little bit of a playoff preview about this game. I did one last week for the Green Bay Packers, and I will continue to do it throughout the playoffs as the Eagles continue to win. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Starting off with the first thing I really wanted to bring up is the weather. And normally, you don't really think about it too much, but now there is significant weather due for Philadelphia. There's going to be snow during this game. It'll be snowing throughout this game. Weather reports are pretty much confirming that. We'll see how much it is at the time. It'll be anywhere from 3 to 5 inches. Based on a lot of consensus weather maps, it looks like it'll be closer to 5. And I think a lot of what this game will be hinges heavily on this weather. And I think the weather is an advantage to Philly over the Rams. Philly is a running team, and running teams do very well in snow, because the one thing is, you can go downfield, you can block. The defense is typically on their tippy toes because they struggle to cut, to chase, to do what they need to do to bring guys down. So, with this opportunity, if you're Philly, you could be looking at a game very similar to 2013 where LaShawn McCoy just took over in the second half and racks up 200 yards and that's it. It's not going to be easy, right? Like the Rams, they saw what this running team can do to them in sunny Los Angeles, inside a dome, on a clean field. In the snow, they're probably going to try to sell out for the run as much as possible. We'll talk more about the offensive matchups when we get to it, but the weather is a factor and it's a component. Ironically, the last time I believe Philly had a snow game was that snow game against the Lions, which ironically had Matt Stafford in it. But weather is going to be a factor, and I think it's going to affect so much how this game is played. It's going to affect your ability to kick field goals. It might affect how you handle things on special teams. It's really hard to play in special teams when you can't really get traction. I think it's going to affect things on defense for both teams. So let's start talking about the individual matchups. I won't talk about special teams because I really don't have significantly different notes to last week, and especially I think with the snow component to this game, I definitely think that changes. It doesn't. I think it kind of affects both teams equally, and I think it kind of makes special teams kind of a net neutral. So, moving on, we'll start with the Eagles offense versus the Rams defense. So, the first thing about the Eagles offense and the Rams defense, you've got kind of an interesting matchup of the Eagles passing offense versus the Rams passing defense, where the Rams, they're not a great coverage defense, right? They have given up a lot of yards. They've been really good down the stretch, but throughout the course of the season, they haven't been a great coverage defense. Like, you can beat them if you have weapons. On the other hand, the Eagles offense, passing offense, hasn't been the best in the league. Now, it hasn't been for several reasons, and a lot of it being that the Eagles haven't really needed it because they've been so good at taking care of their opponents, especially through running the football, that it hasn't mattered as much to throw. Like, why are you throwing it 45 times when you could just run the ball, grind clock, and end the game? So that's what Philly's been doing. So I kind of would expect, depending on how the weather fares, for them to try to take advantage of the matchup, throwing the football. Now, last time they played the Rams, Jalen only threw for about 180 yards in that game. And the only reason why he did is because the Eagles ran the ball so well. And, the game was 20-7, I believe, by the beginning of the third quarter. And at that point, it's like, we're not going to keep throwing the football around for no reason. We're going to just grind clock and end this game quickly. But the last time these two teams played, A.J. Brown had over 100 yards receiving, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do that again, and especially because they can't focus all their attention on A.J. Devontae was not healthy in Week 12. He's healthy today. So it'll be very interesting to see them go up against these Rams corners. Ahkello Witherspoon is dealing with an injury, but it seems like he will play. AJ's had a lot of success going up against Ahkello Witherspoon, both earlier this year and, of course, against the Steelers in 2022. The second point, can Saquon take advantage again? I hinted at this talking about the snow game opportunity, but the Rams are also not a great rushing defense, and we saw that in Week 12 how Saquon gashed them. Now, do I think Saquon's going to go for 300 again? Probably not, but you never know. And this kind of bodes well for the Eagles and the rushing offense, which is already pretty dominant. The Rams' defensive line, which is really good, and we'll talk about that in a second, but they're a little light in the pads, if you understand what I mean, and they're not the greatest run defense. They're really good pass rushing defense, and because of that, you can run on them, and teams have had success running on the Rams. Now, teams like the Vikings didn't, because the Vikings aren't a good running team to begin with. So you look at this, and you look at the fact that it's probably going to snow, so that means Saquon might get a lot of carries. I could see the Eagles just mashing the ball and just ball controlling the Rams to death with the run game, especially if it's snowing. And I would be surprised if it's really heavily snowing. I'd be surprised if Jalen throws more than like 20 times in this game. And he might throw when he absolutely needs to. I mean, we might see like 1940s football in this game, depending on how snowy it gets. But yeah, I could see that being a big matchup. So my X factor for this matchup is the Rams' defensive line, and I'm highlighting Jared Verse, but you can put literally any of them up here, and they're all really good. They had a night on Monday against the Vikings. They had 9 sacks as a unit. That came with some other DB pressures and whatnot. Jared Verse had a fumble recovery touchdown. It was a really good performance by them. Last time these two teams played, it wasn't too much. They had a couple pressures here and there. I think they had a sack or two. But this Eagles O-line's really good. But the one thing is, Jalen does have a tendency to hold the ball for a while, so who knows how that fares in this game. But yeah, so moving on. Rams offense versus the Eagles defense. And the first thing is the Eagles got to play a little bit tighter run defense. Now, Kyren Williams did pop off a few runs, especially early in that game, the last time these two teams played. And especially without their linebacker, Nakobe Dean, which we'll talk about in a sec. The run defense really is going to be a huge part of this game, especially if it is snowy, because I can't imagine the Rams not trying to do the same thing. We saw a lot of missed tackles last week against the Packers, especially after the Dean's injury. And if we are not able to wrap up and bring these guys down, more so talking about Puka than Kyren Williams, but especially in the run game, whoever gets the ball carry, because Puka can run it, anyone can run it. These guys are going to run over you if you're not careful. And in a game like this, you gotta really have stout run defense. So this might be a big Jordan Davis game. I can't wait to see that. And really, for the Eagles, the next point is their linebacker quandary. With no Nakobe Dean, who's going to play next to Zach Bond? My guess it'll be Oren Burks, who'll get a majority of the snaps. Trotter will rotate in as the game goes on, depending on how Burks is playing. I know people aren't necessarily happy about that because people heard about like his Super Bowl performance against the Chiefs, and they've heard about last week he didn't play super well when he was in. I mean, the problem is you're not going to get anything better at this point. You're not going to be able to sign anybody, bring anybody in that's significantly better that's sitting out in the street. They did sign Nicholas Morrow this week. I don't think he gets any defensive snaps. I expect him to probably just play special teams because you can't expect him to come in on a short week and learn how to play in this defense and then start a playoff game. That's just not going to happen. They're going to rely on the guys that have been here, and he'll probably take their snaps on special teams to kind of give him a break. My X factor in this matchup is Puka Nacua. I think Puka is a top 10 receiver right now in the league. You can argue top 5. And Puka can do so many things. And the last time these two teams played, he had a big game. He had over 100 yards, and he was making some plays. And if you do not contain Puka Nacua, he can, he can wreck this game for you. Now, I like our corners against him. I thought the Rams did a lot of creative things to get him the football. A lot of slide motions where they threw it to him in the flat and let him run after the catch. It'll be interesting to see, revisiting this matchup, how they counter that. But yeah. All in all, I'm excited for Sunday's game. Cannot wait to watch. I look forward to see if the Eagles move on. So with that, this is Bird Brain. Hope you guys enjoyed being nerdy for the birdies. Fly Eagles fly, and see you around.